And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of the program. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. We are 8 days away from Christmas. Well, technically 7 days away from Christmas Eve, but from the whole shebang, Christmas Day, 8 days, which means if you haven't got a start on your Christmas gift buying, you better get at it. But, I get it. The whole point of Christmas is not to receive, it is to give. And that is my favorite part, finding cool things for my loved ones. And, it's not all the time. Not all the time are they any expensive type of thing. I like to find, interesting things that are that you wouldn't normally buy yourself. But it's a great time of year, and I absolutely love it. And there's now 8 days to go. Well, welcome to the program. There is a ton of stuff to cover. And it seems to me that the closer we get to the inauguration, the crazier and crazier that the Democrats get. And it makes sense, too, because as I've told you, this is the most dangerous time in any election. Right after the election, before the inauguration, because the Democrats don't have anything to lose. They've lost the House, they've lost the Senate, they've lost the presidency. They really don't have anybody on their back bench waiting to run for any sort of office, and there isn't another election for 2 years. So they may as well do whatever they can do right now. And Lord, are they doing a whole bunch of stuff, selling the border wall and, telling you that the drones don't exist and don't worry about them and it's not a big deal. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's going on. But we begin this morning with Biden's ridiculous claim that his campaign was basically scandal-free. Here's what he said.
We run a campaign that's basically scandal-free. It's hard to do in American politics these days.
Must be because you didn't pull it off. Did you hear the people laughing right at the end of that soundbite? It's just a quick little soundbite that I took off of X, so it's a little bit difficult to figure out what he said afterwards. But he claims that his campaign was basically scandal-free. From the Daily Wire, and I quote, President Joe Biden claimed on Sunday that he had run a campaign free from scandal, and critics were quick to point out the errors in that particular statement. Quote, "We've run a campaign that's basically scandal-free. That's hard to do in American politics these days." Now, Biden made the comments during the Democratic National Committee's holiday reception in Washington, D.C., where he also weighed in on the possible political future of Vice President Kamala Harris. The Trump War Room's Jacob Schneider posted a brief clip from the event along with a caption that read, Biden, the soundbite that I played for you, except covering up for obvious cognitive decline, peddling his family's influence, hiding classified documents, etc., etc., etc. Let's see here. Critics pushed back on Biden's claim, claiming laying out a few details that they thought he may have missed when making his assessment. Does Joe Biden not know what year it is? Steve Guest asked, adding, he's cooked if he thinks this. Sure. I mean, Joe Biden could possibly believe this if you don't include the Afghanistan withdrawal, the illegal alien invasion on both our southern and northern border, being caught with classified documents, keeping those documents in a garage next to your Corvette, and allowing your criminal son, Hunter, you just pardoned him, so he's no longer a criminal. Well, I guess if you get a pardon, you really are still a criminal. It's just you don't have to face the penalties of it. Anyway, cocaine in the White House, the Chinese spy balloon, medical emergency that forced him out of the race, lying about pardoning Hunter, and the list goes on and on. This is a claim that almost every Democrat tries to make. Well, except for Bill Clinton. He didn't try to make this one. But Barack Obama, oh, yeah, he was right on top of it, saying, we have had a scandal-free presidency. Yeah, right, except for Fast and Furious and you name it. Benghazi, whatever. There's a long list. Well, the truth is that Democrats can't operate in any other way except to have scandals, because the things that they believe don't jive with the Constitution, and many of them don't jive with American law. So they have to break the rules. They have to break the law. And when they're caught, it's the same play that they run all of the time. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't look at what the other hand is doing. You just listen to what we say. That's why when they lose elections, they claim that they just didn't explain it enough to voters. That's why people didn't vote for them. But don't pay any attention. Just listen to what we say. We'll tell you the truth. And that's where the old adage, I don't know if you call it an adage, but the principle, the theory, whatever you want to call it. But if you want to know what the Democrats are up to, just listen to what they're accusing the Republicans of. And that will tell you exactly what Democrats are doing. It's because the Democrats don't really care about the law. They don't care about telling the truth or anything, because they are willing to do anything that services their end goal, whatever the goal that may be. They'll crawl into bed with anybody that they think can help out their cause, sometimes literally and sometimes figuratively. But they change the goalposts, they break the rules, they break the law, and they'll do anything to get in power. So it should come as no surprise whatsoever that Joe Biden says that his presidency or his campaign has been entirely scandal-free. A bunch of bullcrap, if you ask me. Now, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but our pal James O'Keefe has a new undercover video out. And, we really haven't seen that much from our pal James in a while. Of course, he got fired from Project Veritas and had to, I don't know what you call it, ramp up his own company. It's called O'Keefe Media Group. And so he has a new video out of a National Security Council advisor inside the White House detailing that Biden can't say a sentence. Now, let me just set this up for you. One of O'Keefe's operatives set up a date with this guy, and his name is Henry Appel. So she has a date with him, and on this date, he's spilling the tea and telling her everything that's going to make her want him more. He's in a position of power, and he's telling her things that she's not going to hear anywhere else. But in the eye-opening interview, Henry Appel, an advisor at the National Security Council, the NSC, offered a candid and troubling perspective on President Joe Biden's current health and mental state. Appel, who works with the Intelligence Program Directorate, has a direct responsibility for providing senior policymakers with sensitive and classified information. So this is a guy that, one, has a probably above top secret security clearance, that he works directly with the National Security Council, and that he's not supposed to be talking out of church. Yet he's on a date with a presumably ultra hot chick, so why not divulge some really sensitive information, or at least sensitive to the Democrat Party? Now, Appel began acknowledging the president's communication struggles, stating bluntly, quote, Joe Biden is like dead. Not literally, like he just can't even say a sentence. These words have drawn significant attention due to their unfiltered and alarming nature, particularly given the sensitive role that Appel plays in national security. Quote, we give all of the senior policymakers all the secrets, Appel explained. underscoring the high level of trust that the NSC places in the administration's leadership. Yet, his candid admission raises questions about whether the president's ability to manage that responsibility is increasingly in doubt. Now, I'm going to play a bit of the soundbite for him. We're going to do a little stop and start on it because it is kind of a long video, but you got to listen to what this guy says. I mean, he's obviously spilling sensitive information in an effort to, impress the chick that he's with. His date, who also happens to be the undercover operative working for James O'Keefe. And here's another thing. How many James O'Keefe videos have these people in the administration seen? And how many times have they seen this setup? All right, you're having dinner with this person, and they start asking probing questions. And then there's follow-ups to those probing questions. Shouldn't the alarm bells go off in your head that, whoa, maybe something's being recorded here? Or, better yet, if you are a part of the National Security Council, why would you go on a date with somebody that you don't know who ends up having to work for James O'Keefe? Seems to me that the Biden administration really isn't vetting its employees all that well. Well, let's start at the beginning of O'Keefe's video, and you'll hear him come in and out explaining what's going on. So we'll probably do a little bit of a stop and start, but here's the beginning of it.
Well, here's the tea. Joe Biden is dead. He can't say a sentence. He's really progressed in his holding. Everybody recognized. I can't believe it wasn't a bigger scandal there. He'll be dead in a year.
Okay, so did you hear him? That he's really progressed in his old age. And right there at the end, he says he'll be dead in a year. That he can't even put a sentence together. Now, clearly, this is some National Security Council tea that he shouldn't be spilling, simply because if the president of the United States is not in a capacity to run the country, why wouldn't any other, maligned actor across the world or, one of America's enemies take advantage of that? But he's talking about it out in public as if it's no big deal, and he's using it to impress his date. Let's continue.
Meet Henry Appel, an advisor for the National Security Council. Henry Appel shared that President Biden had called the NSC White House phone while on a foreign trip looking for NSC advisor Jake Sullivan. Henry told the president that, in fact, Mr. Sullivan was not at the White House, but on the same foreign trip as President Biden.
My boss was on an international trip with him, Europe or something. The phone rang in the office, and I was like, "Oh, Mr. President, it's Henry." He was like, "He's safe there." He's like, "No, he's traveling with you. He's on the same trip that you are."
In another encounter with President Biden, Henry Appel from the National Security Council revealed a phone call exchange. On the call, Biden was asking for NSC advisor Jake Sullivan. Henry told Biden that Sullivan had left the office for the day. Biden stated he would call Sullivan's personal phone. Instead, Biden called the same office 10 seconds later, asking for Sullivan again.
A couple weeks ago, I was the last one in the office, and he called from my boss. And so I picked the phone and said, "Hello, Mr. President, it's Henry on Jake's phone. He's left for the day, but I can try to get him. I'm the line for you." And he asked me some questions, and I was like, "I don't know, let me get the track him down. So I'll call his Secret Service detail." It's I'll try his unclassified phone, then 10 seconds later, same.
Okay, now that part was probably really hard to hear. I mean, there's a lot of background noise in the sound bites, so you have to listen very carefully. But right there at the end, Appel says, well, I'll try him the president tells Appel that he's going to call Jake Sullivan on his unclassified phone. The phone that is not encrypted, the phone that is not a government phone, that probably doesn't have all the security on it. So the president of the United States is going to call the national security advisor at the State Department, Jake Sullivan, to on his personal phone to talk about classified, sensitive information. Now, what you just heard was him saying that the president called Appel in the office repeatedly, asking him the same question. I mean, that is classic dementia behavior where you don't really remember what you did, 5 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, whatever. Now, your long-term memory might be pretty good, but short-term memory, not so much. Let's continue with it.
I picked it up again. I was like, hi again, it's Henry. He was like, is Jake there? And I was like, no, you called the same office.
Henry Appel stated that President Biden did not understand basic words in meetings at the White House.
Another time my boss went in to brief him, I heard the tongue wince. I said like, oh, this is like a novel phenomenon or something. Like it's new, like it hasn't been done before. My boss said it. I just like novel? Like, what do you mean, like a book? Like, what do you mean novel? The true meanings of the word novel, like he lost them.
Henry even goes on to say, on his dating profile, his greatest strength is, quote, oversharing on the first date.
No kidding. Oversharing on the first date, especially if you're working for the National Security Council. And, oh, man, more evidence that the Democrats and the Biden administration are absolutely incompetent. But a big question, why is that guy still the president? I know we've only got 30 days or so, but somebody needs to do something. More back in a minute. Are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, just about anywhere that you can look, you'll find the program. Welcome back, my friends. Happy Christmas, holiday season, all of that jazz. It's my favorite time of year, my friends, so I hope that you're enjoying the season with your family. Remember, you've only got 8 days left. Well, technically 7 days because you got to have all your shopping done on Christmas Eve. But anyway, hope everything's going well for you. Now, some people that things are not going so well for are the Democrats. And, Kamala Harris recently gave a speech. I believe it was at the DNC Christmas party or whatever they were calling it, Christmas reception. Celebrate the things that they have, the successes that they've achieved, which right now, not so much. But you may have heard the Kamala Harris soundbite that, we are not defeated. We may have lost the House. We lost the Senate. We didn't win the presidency, but we're not defeated. Well, Van Jones was giving an interview. Oh, and just to give you a reminder of who Van Jones is. Now he works for CNN, and he's the Democrat strategist they have on all the time. He was on there election night. But I think it's important to take a step back and discuss who exactly Van Jones is. Now, in the Obama administration, Obama appointed him as the green energy czar. And it was then that Glenn Beck started asking questions. Who is Van Jones? And it come to find out that Van Jones is a leftist radical from the word go. I mean, the guy is an avowed communist, that he was one of the founding members of the Apollo Alliance. The Apollo Alliance is the group that wrote Obamacare. It's a radical left-wing organization that was in bed, if memory serves, with John Podesta. Offshoots of the Apollo Alliance ended up starting the Center for American Progress. So the guy is an avowed leftist. Well, he has wormed his way in at CNN. And, I forgot to tell you, and after Beck went after him and exposed who this guy is and all of his radical ties, Van Jones ended up resigning from the Obama administration. Well, now he gave an interview shortly after Kamala gave that little speech, and he basically said that Donald Trump is smarter than all of the Democrats. I mean, he did win the House, the Senate, the presidency. Obviously, he won the Electoral College and the popular vote. And so he beat the Democrats like a snare drum. Now, here's the first soundbite that I want to play for you when Van Jones says that Donald Trump beat the dog out of the Democrats. Listen to this.
You wouldn't believe how dehydrated most people.
The last thing I just want to say is that, there's a reckoning inside the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris promised us freedom. Well, she delivered it to us because now we're free from having to run anything in Washington, D.C. That's not what we were signing up for. It's what we got. And I hope the party takes a chance to look at the fact that we pushed all our rebels out of this party. We had a rebellion in our party in 2016. It was called Bernie Sanders. You had a rebellion in your party in 2016. It was called Donald Trump. Your rebel won. Our rebel lost. And then since then, the rebels in our party have been pushed out. RFK was a rebel inside of our party. He wanted to run against Joe Biden fair and square. The DNC wouldn't let him. Pushed him out. You can walk down the list. Don't forget, Elon Musk was a Andrew Yang Democrat 4 years ago. He's out. You can walk down the list. Joe Rogan was very favorable toward Michelle Obama. He was a Bernie guy. He's out. So there's something that's happened in this party where the rebels in this party no longer feel like they have a place, and we've got to be able to talk about that stuff honestly.
So there we go. Van Jones being honest about what happened in the election. Fox News has a piece out where Van Jones went on to say in a later interview that Donald Trump is way smarter. And I quote, President-elect Donald Trump ripped the Biden administration for selling border wall materials. And he went on to talk about how Van Jones admitted, and the commentators that was doing that interview went on to talk about Van Jones. Anyway, former Obama advisor Van Jones said during a recent interview that President-elect Donald Trump was smarter than himself and all of his critics. Quote, guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Let me be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all of his critics. You know how I know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court, the popular vote, Van Jones said. Jones was asked by former CNN reporter Chris Cillizza during an interview on his YouTube channel about Trump's successful presidential campaign. Quote, he has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him, Jones added. Jones said that Trump was the most powerful person of our lifetimes and argued the Democratic Party looked like idiots. Quote, we're idiots, he said. We lost. So we have to go back into the locker room and we have to sit down and figure out how the hell did we get beat? And when you look at it closely, it's the arrogance, it's the elitism, and it's not respecting people. It's not listening to people. Well, at least there's one person in the Democrat Party who can see the writing on the wall and can tell exactly how they got beat. Here's Van Jones saying that.
How the hell did Donald Trump figure out?
Now that's Chris Cillizza there.
The mainstream media is the fringe, and the fringe is now the mainstream. How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were, like, stunned. But, like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still, like, writes handwritten notes, how did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement.
Look, heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. So everybody keeps, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
The popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime, and we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary.
You're totally right.
Yeah, he is totally right, and the Democrats are idiots. Anybody could have seen how they were going to lose this election. In fact, I was cautiously optimistic from the very beginning. And it's anybody could see how Trump was going to win this election. People generally vote with their pocketbooks, and the economy has been in the crapper for a really long time. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat that, Bidenomics is working. People are not going to believe it unless they see the results in their daily lives. But the truth is, during the totality of the Biden administration, grocery prices are up, fuel prices were up, it costs more to live, your income was down due to inflation. Everything was terrible. In fact, Joe Biden's going to go down as probably the worst president in American history, worse than James K. Polk, I would say. And that's saying something because most people don't have any idea who James K. Polk was. But Van Jones is absolutely correct that the Democrats are idiots. They should have seen this from the beginning, and they just let it all go and thought that Kamala was their gal. And not to mention, they completely abandoned their Democrat values. And, I shouldn't say Democrat values. Their Democratic values. And they took the nomination away from Joe Biden and gave it to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris didn't win a single primary vote. Nobody voted for her. Joe Biden, I think the number was like 14 million people voted for Joe Biden. Well, they completely threw all that out and installed Kamala Harris as the nominee. Of course, even Democrat voters were not going to go along with that. Even if they are Democrats, and they're not going to go along with it, and a lot of them ended up voting for Donald Trump. So anyway, Van Jones, I don't think that I ever would have said this, but he might be the most honest person in politics. At least he called it how he saw it. We'll be back after the break. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Did you see where Alejandro Mayorkas is claiming that all the drones are just stars? He actually said that. All of the Democrats, this administration, none of them want you to know what's going on with all of these drones. I know I don't have any idea what's going on with them, but Trump seems to know. From The Blaze, Trump says the government knows what the drones are, demands answers, and he said that something strange is going on. He also commented about his private residence in New Jersey being a target of the drones. President-elect Donald Trump commented Monday on the controversy over mysterious drones sighted over New Jersey and other locations. Trump said that he believes the government knows what the drones actually are and claimed the public is not being told the truth. He was taking questions from reporters from Palm Beach, Florida, where he made his comments. Quote, "Something strange is going on, and for some reason, they don't want to tell the people. And they should. The government knows what is happening," Trump said. "Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where they went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment on it. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows," Trump continued. Let's see here. He noted that the drones were sighted over Bedminster, where he owns a private residence. Quote, "I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster," he joked. "I've decided to cancel my trip." When asked if he had received any intelligence briefing on the drones, he didn't want to comment on that. Quote, "Something strange is going on, and for some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should." Now, apart from any sort of extraterrestrial theories, which I don't think that's the case here, some have wondered if foreign actors are using the drones to spy on military bases. A Chinese citizen was arrested recently in California for flying a drone over a base and taking photos. But the question is, why is the administration not informing the public of what is going on? Now, I don't really have any idea of what these drones are, except to say that there's a whole bunch of them and they're flying around and the government doesn't want to tell you what they are. Whether they're for surveillance or they're for private amusement or whatever, the government needs to tell us what's happening. And so far, we don't have any answers. And here's the thing. It might just be an attempt to create another conspiracy theory. Because when human beings, we can't resist a mystery. If there is a mystery, we have to find out the answer to it. It's like it's somehow programmed into our brain, and the longer it goes on, the more the conspiracy theory builds. And that might be the simplest part of it. They may just be innocent drones, and the administration is trying to get the attention away from everything that they're doing. And I mean there's a lot of stuff that they're doing. A little bit deeper down in the stack of stuff, I've got a piece about the border wall and I covered this on Friday, but how the administration is selling off pieces of the border wall at 5 cents on the dollar. So they're doing that. Maybe they're trying to create a conspiracy theory to distract any attention from that. But one of the places that I think that we should keep our attention is on people that are no longer in the administration. So, for example, Andrew McCabe. That guy is worse than Christopher Wray. He's the guy that was right at the heart of all of the FISA warrants, even though Jim Comey signed them. It was Andrew McCabe that was right there. Well, according to Breitbart, former FBI Director Andrew McCabe calls for a, quote, change for us to change the context of gun ownership after the shooting in Madison. Now, and that's something I haven't addressed on the program too. There was another shooting at a school in Wisconsin. It turns out that it was, I think the report I said said that it was a 15-year-old girl that was the shooter. That a teacher was killed, and that the shooter ended up killing themselves. And there was a number of students that were injured, a couple of them with life-threatening injuries. So bad situation. Well, of course, the Democrats take advantage of any sort of situation where there's a gun involved, and they use it to call for more gun control. From Breitbart, and I quote, former FBI Director Andrew McCabe said it is time to, quote, change the context of gun ownership in the United States following the Madison Christian School shooting. During a CNN broadcast, McCabe said, quote, we're going nowhere because it keeps happening. We know it's going to happen. It's happening today. It's going to happen again in the near future. And I can guarantee you that every time it happens, we just do about nothing. That doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can't do. There are things we could do. We could support and enact legislation that changes the context of gun ownership. Here is Andrew McCabe saying it.
Well, Brianna, we're nowhere. We're nowhere because it keeps happening. We know it's going to happen again. It's happening today. It's going to happen again in the near future. I can guarantee you that. And every time it happens, we do just about nothing. That doesn't mean there aren't things we can't do. We could do things. We could support and enact legislation that changes the context of gun ownership in this country and emphasizes gun safety and responsibility with the firearms that you own and keeping them out of the hands of children and doing really vigorous, consistent background checks across the country. We could stop selling people, eliminate the ability to purchase guns without a background check. Now, we don't know if any of those factors were relevant in this shooting, but we're talking about a big problem.
All right. Enough of it. Much of what he just said is complete bullcrap. You cannot purchase a firearm without a background check, unless, of course, you're buying it from a private party, which there's no way that you could force people to do background checks before they did a private sale of a firearm. I don't know how you would enforce that. I don't know if you could enforce that, except to say if you're caught, well, then here's the penalty. But as far as the vigorous background checks that he's talking about, those already exist. You cannot buy a firearm, shotgun, rifle, pistol, otherwise, without a background check. Secondly, it is not the government's place to be teaching gun safety. If you wanted to teach gun safety, you'd stop passing laws that prevented us from teaching gun safety in school. A lot of people don't know that it was not that long ago that gun safety was taught in American schools. There's one of the early programs I did on Cowboy state politics was all about Joe Biden and gun control. And I found this piece where in schools across the United States, part of the PE program was to teach gun safety and actually shot firearms in the school. In some cases, some schools had indoor firing ranges. So don't tell me that we can't do it. The only thing that we should, and I think that we should absolutely go back to it. There's no reason why we can't teach gun safety in schools. But here's the problem. It can't be a top-down approach. You can't have the federal government telling local school districts what they have to teach, even though some local school districts are taking their marching orders from the Department of Education instead of their state Department of Education. I mean, that's where you get a lot of this woke crap and DEI and critical race theory and all of that. But there's we just have to stop passing legislation that prevents schools from teaching the things that they want to teach. Similarly, we've got to elect people to our school boards that actually want to teach this sort of stuff. In Wyoming, it is absolutely legal for a school district to arm teachers in the school. And I if memory serves, the way the legislation was written is there has to be some training that goes along with it, but the school district themselves can decide whether or not they're going to allow firearms in the classroom. And in the entire state of Wyoming, all 46 school districts, there's only 4 that have decided to do that. But there's nothing preventing them from absolutely arming teachers. My guess would be it's not a guess really, the only way that you stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. If teachers were armed and this shooter went into the Christian school, I mean, there's no reason why that couldn't have been stopped before anybody got hurt. Well, the only way to do that is to arm teachers. No amount of metal detectors or school resource officers, though school resource officers are a good step. The best step is to allow concealed carry in schools. Now, last year in Wyoming, we passed House Bill 125, which would have done away with all gun-free zones. And I think with the exception, there were a couple of exceptions. I think the courtrooms were one of them. But no more gun-free zones in schools, no more gun-free zones in government, local government buildings, those sorts of things. That's the way that you prevent a school shooting. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed that. And used a ridiculous argument in his veto message. And he said something like, well, this bill would take away local control of firearms. Well, there is no local control of firearms except at the school district saying they can have firearms in the school. But anyway, this upcoming legislative session, you should absolutely expect to see another version of House Bill 125, and it is definitely going to sail through the House. There's some question as to whether or not it will sail through the Senate, because 7 of the 10 committees in the Senate are run by the liberals. The majority floor leader is a liberal. That's Tara Nethercott. So while I would like to say that gun bill will go through the Senate, it's anybody's guess. If I had to venture an educated guess, I would say that it would probably end up being watered down a little bit before its return for concurrence. But anyway, you're going to see that again, and rightfully so. Now, right on cue, the Democrats have started again their push for getting rid of the Electoral College. Every single time they lose, this is the refrain, and I'm surprised that it took them this long. From the Blaze, Senate Democrats introduced bill to end the Electoral College. Quote, a group of Democratic U.S. senators on Monday introduced legislation intended to end the Electoral College. Democrats have criticized the Electoral College for decades, as Republicans have many times won the presidency through the Electoral College without winning the popular vote. While some feared that President-elect Donald Trump might continue the trend, he was able to win both the popular vote and the electoral vote. Let's see here. The Democrat Party wants a monopoly. Quote, a group of Senate Democrats introduced the bill that would abolish the Electoral College, restoring democracy by allowing the direct election of presidents through the popular vote alone, read a statement from the Senate Judiciary Committee. In an election, and we're still quoting here, the person who gets the most votes should win. It's that simple, said Democratic Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii. No one's vote should count more based on where they live. The Electoral College is outdated and it's undemocratic, and it's time to end it. It's interesting that Schatz would say that it's undemocratic because it was intended to be so. That was absolutely the intent of our founders. None of them were in favor of democracy. All of them were educated on the perils of democracy. Most of them knew what happened in the Roman Republic. Most of them knew what happened in Athens. And in fact, Thomas Jefferson said that democracy is only an example of the worst form of government because it ends in mob rule. And that's exactly what our founders intended to avoid with the Electoral College. Defenders of the Electoral College have argued that without it, presidential candidates would shift their focus to campaigning in only the most populous states and neglect all others. Quote, 11 blue states will decide the president, said Mark Levin on his television show in October. All the rest of the country, the other 39 states, tens of millions of people, will literally have no say in the election of the president. He went on to explain that all of the campaigning would take place in populous cities and rural Americans would be completely neglected. The big metropolitan cities will decide who's presidents, which would be an utter and complete disaster, but the Democrat Party wants a monopoly. And if you look at the map of this past election, the electoral map, what you'll see is that the vast majority of the country is red, and there's only pockets of blue on the entire map. Well, those are your population centers. I remember during the second Barack Obama election, Mitt Romney won the entire state of Virginia except for one county. One county in Virginia was enough to carry the entire state. Now, if you want the presidential election nationwide to reflect that, then go ahead and get rid of the Electoral College. But absolutely stupid idea. It's stupid Democrats that come up with it. But this is the same thing that they do every single time that they lose an election. They just go to the common refrain of let's get rid of the Electoral College because the Democrats do want a monopoly. They want to do anything they can to ensure their power for the next, forever. That's why they want illegal immigration. That's why they want to do away with the Electoral College. That's why they do a whole bunch of stuff. More after the break. I don't know if you've noticed this or not. Jingle bells, jingle bells. That's right, my friends. It's Christmas time. And if you haven't done so already, you are going to need a Christmas tree, which means you're going to have to tromp through about 2 feet of snow to find it. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in this country. Right now, you can listen to Cowboy State Politics pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts. Well, that's the podcast anyway. Just type in Cowboy State Politics or David Iverson, and you will find it. Also, you can watch the live program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, and you can listen to it on the Independence Network every Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Now, just to kind of give you a heads up of what's going to happen during the legislative session, I'm thinking that we're just going to have to move up the live program, and I might begin it at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to be a real morning show or earlier morning show. And I've got to do that simply because the session starts at 10 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I like to be there in person. I don't really like to watch it on YouTube. And, I want to be able to report to you what exactly is happening on the floor. And the only way to do that, and here's why. What you hear on YouTube is not necessarily what happens on the floor. There's a lot of things that happen that don't go through the microphone. The only thing that goes on YouTube is what comes through all those microphones. So there's a lot of things that happen that don't get recorded. And, and here's the thing too. If you just sit down for it with a 2-hour video of the legislative session, you have no idea what's in there. And so I pick out the major stories of the day and put them together so that I can point them out to you. So I get you a good idea of what's happening. Now, I mentioned earlier in the show that the Biden administration is selling off parts of the border wall. Now, this was a story that was broke by the Daily Wire, and I think I covered it it was either Thursday or Friday. But Trump says that Biden's border wall sale is almost a criminal act and that he's going to seek a restraining order. And I quote, Trump blasted the Biden administration's decision to sell off parts of the border wall following the Daily Wire investigation. President-elect Donald Trump tore into the Biden administration for selling off parts of the border wall following the report. Trump made a statement after the investigation revealed that the Biden administration was selling off portions of the border wall in public auctions with the goal of unloading all of it before Trump takes office. One Republican senator found that the administration was recouping just 0.2% of the original cost of the wall material to taxpayers. Quote, the administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it back up, Trump said in a press conference. What they're doing, it's almost a criminal act. And let's see here, here's what Trump had to say at that press conference.
But now we ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive. And now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. And the administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. They know we're going to use it, and if we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it, and it'll cost double what it cost years ago, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're talking about a lot of wall. I built much more than I said I was going to build. But then after it was built, I said, we can do some more because it's sort of like water, people flow through, and that will pretty much really take care of it. And what happened is they just, as you see, they're trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. And that's really, that has nothing to do with a smooth transition. That has to do with people really trying to stop our nation. And all it means really is that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more, not even talking about the time. Time would be pretty long, but we'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars more on building the same wall that we already have.
Exactly right. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars more than they originally paid for it. And the only reason that the Biden administration is trying to sell it off is to frustrate Trump's efforts to rebuild the entire border wall. It's I don't know if it's criminal, but there have been some reports that John Barrasso actually voted for this. I'm going to track this down, and I'm going to ask him about it. Right after I finish the program, I'm going to go right down to his congressional office that's right down here in Sheridan. I'll see what I can find out, and I'll report back to you tomorrow on what I found out. But some of the reports I've seen is that Barrasso voted to sell it, and Cynthia Lummis voted not to. But I'll reach out to both of their offices and see what I can find out. Pretty disturbing if our senator voted to sell it, which, I don't know. I mean, all these things, you got to trust but verify, and you got to make sure that you've got your stuff right. Now, there's a Democratic representative, Jasmine Crockett. She's part of the squad, and she has suggested that the reason why Trump won the election was because of a slave mentality. And it's mostly Hispanic Trump voters. She insists that Harris ran a flawless campaign. And I quote, Jasmine Crockett accused many Hispanic voters of having a slave mentality for supporting President-elect Donald Trump. That's my distilled summary of what happens within the Latino community, Crockett, a Democrat of Texas, told Vanity Fair on Friday. Quote, I've not run into that with the Asian community. I've not run into that with the African-American community. I've not run into that with the Caribbean community. I've only run into it with Hispanics. When we think of illegals, they think of, many people that came out of the cartels and that kind of criminal type book or whatever. It's insane. It almost reminds me of what people would talk about when they would talk about the slave mentality and the hate that some slaves would have for themselves, she continued. It's almost almost okay. I can't read any more of this. The whole reason why I pulled this piece is to tell you the depths at which the Democrats will go. Everything for them boils down to race, and they are not above dehumanizing an entire group of people to try to explain away the reason that they lost. Perhaps the reason that they lost is they had a terrible candidate who ran a terrible campaign, and they were trying to run against a very, very, very popular ex-president. Maybe that's the entire reason why they lost the election. Because they're elitists, because they thought that they could lie to the American people and convince them that the economy was actually not doing what they thought it was. The economy's in the crapper. Our military is depleted. We don't have any respect overseas. There's wars going on all over the place when Trump was in office. So there are a number of reasons why the Democrats lost, none of which they're willing to admit to. And the only thing that they can go back to is either it's misogyny or it's racism. That's why Kamala Harris lost. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that it absolutely paint is the wrong word, but it refers to the vast majority of Americans as stupid, unintelligent, and pliable people that will do anything that they're told. And the truth is that that's what the Democrat Party thinks of you, that you're stupid, that you will believe anything that you're told, and that you'll go along with it. Now, I will admit that in some cases, people are pretty dumb, and they will go along with what they're told. I mean, there are Democrats, by the way, who believe this sort of stuff. But in the end, as Winston Churchill says, Americans will do the right thing after we've exhausted all other options. And this most recent election was a reaction to all of the horrible policies of the Biden administration, the bad economy, the bad foreign policy decisions, all of the attempts at government control, telling you to put a light bulb, what kind of light bulb you can put in your house or refrigerator you can buy. There is a whole long list of the reasons why the Democrats lost the race. And very few of them, except for Van Jones, and I think it's a great comparison between Van Jones and this Crockett person, that Van Jones is actually being kind of honest. We got beat. Trump is smarter than us. They took the presidency, they took the House, they took the Senate, they've got conservatives on the Supreme Court. Democrats lost. And the reason why they lost is you can only lie to people for so long, and eventually you're going to be found out for the liar that you are. And that's precisely what happened there. And, Americans are ready to, and it's, every time I heard the Democrat message, we've got to turn the page. There's the obvious reference to, okay, so we're turning the page from what we just went through the past 4 or 5 years, but maybe we want to turn the page on what you did. And to me, the elitist bells just rang loud and clear in my head that the Democrats expected the American people to believe that line of bull crap and it really was, don't believe what your lying eyes are telling you. Don't believe what you're seeing. Don't believe the prices that you're paying in the grocery store. And I think when you compare the Biden presidency to the Jimmy Carter presidency. First of all, Jimmy Carter was a better president. I think that he was more a victim of circumstance than what he actually did, though he had some really bad policies. But remember his malaise speech, that there's this malaise in the country. Well, the reason why, one of the big reasons why Jimmy Carter lost is because how he portrayed the American people, that he told them, you're just downtrodden. You got to get out of this. Well, a similar thing happened with the Biden administration, except that the Biden administration was lying to Americans, saying, no, things aren't really as bad as you make them out to be. We've created a whole bunch of jobs, which, by the way, there's a new jobs report out. Turns out that those 800,000 jobs that the Democrats were claiming, all of them didn't exist. That number has been revised down into the negative. Can you believe that? The Democrats lied? Well, it's just symptomatic of what they always do. And in the end, the Democrats always get found out because, when the facts don't line up with what you're saying and, you can only lie to people for so long. Well, we've got about a minute left in the program, and I want to kind of give you a roadmap of where we're going with the show. Of course, on December 23rd, well, let's see. Let me pull up a calendar here, and let's just see. So Christmas Eve is going to be on Tuesday. That's when the Christmas Eve program is going to be released. And then the Monday before it, I'll have the traditional Cowboy State Politics Christmas special. I've got a couple of stories lined up for you that it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So, the next week, it's going to be busy, and I can't wait for it. It's one of the things that I really look forward to every year, all of the Christmas and holiday programs. But for right now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.